Response video to Antikantavad, Andy. Pleasant enough response. He had one critique of a line I used in my video about, this distinction between understanding, having a principle or an ideal, an overriding, a prime directive is the word I would use. So I could have a prime directive like do no harm, or like in the medical, first do no harm, right? I could have some kind of statement like that. It wouldn't necessarily be a deriver of guilt. It's just a framework that this is the framework within you must function. And so it's not like you never can cross the line. It's like you don't have to always succeed. You just have to not catastrophically fail. So it's kind of like the ambition just to be good at your job or good at some other thing, and it's an overriding understanding that you don't compromise this fundamental thing that you're attempting to be above all else. So I mean, above all else, you're attempting not to catastrophically fail. So you can fail in minor ways, but you just can't fail in catastrophic ways. And it's not, I wouldn't call that something that's derived through some sort of mechanism of negative emotion where you're afraid of failure. You just are attracted to success. You're attracted to, you're hungry for it. And so I just don't think it's quite the same as the negative emotion of I can't fail because failure will give me a feeling. No, you can't fail because there's nothing, everything else is turned to shit. Everything else of value is tainted if you don't manage this prime directive. Something like that. It's very hard to draw these lines between what's pulling us and what's pushing us. Are we being pushed by the mechanism of hunger, or are we being pulled by the actual value of the thing we're hungry for, right? I mean, whether this gravity is something actually falling or whether it's being pulled, So those lines get a little tricky. And as I've argued in previous videos many times, most of our action requires us to become personally invested. We do have to sort of use the emotional whips and carrots to get ourselves to do anything. So if you want to be useful in the world, if that's one of your hungers, if that's your definition of actualization, is accomplishment, productivity, if these are value you hold in terms of understanding them as good things, like being a good lover, this is how you be a good lover, this is how you be a good liver, is you have to have these accomplishments. That you have to become invested in them emotionally, or you're still not going to act. So you can't just know it, you have to know it in your heart. It's like you can know the right thing to do is to jump on the grenade, right, and save the other guys. But to do it, you're going to have to create some emotion to push yourself onto that grenade. Anyway, so that's just the functional part. Alright, so whatever. I don't think I open the door to the negative of guilt being the thing that motivates for you to be a good person, or to avoid being a complete asshole. So I hope that helps. So anyway, now to the real subject of the video, which is this head game part, right? It's all a head game. It's all, at any moment you could just, like say I had no responsibilities. Alright, say I was independently wealthy, Howard Hughes or something, right? Howard Hughes is probably a good example because he became very self-indulgent. He became very introverted, very, very rich internal life, no external life. And I've argued in defense of virtual reality as a fail-safe environment for humanity. You can't, no real nuclear wars in virtual reality. You can commit all kinds of crimes and there's no real victims, that kind of thing. But let's say I could, if I didn't have responsibilities now, and I didn't have any need to be productive, to actualize any kind of ambitions, about being useful. So like in the real world, you sort of have to create external value, right? I have to be valuable to the external world in some way, or I'm not going to have a roof over my head, and I'm not going to have food, and I'm not going to have any of those things. But let's say I had none of those obligations, and I could just sit on my couch and fantasize all day. Yeah, why not? Quite doable, right? I mean, if you don't have the burdens of reality. If reality isn't going to seep in and say, I have to go to the bathroom, or I have to go eat. And then, again, now you're starting to get into the whole idea, I have to pay the bills, I have to turn the furnace on, I have to, it's all these obligations of life. And then again, in this world that we live in, we can calculate, like, I have to do my website, and I have to make my YouTube videos, and I have to make my argument because I got to save the world, and blah, 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 blah. So I have all these other missions I have to accomplish to achieve my definition of productive and actualized and satisfy what I believe to be my need to accomplish, my desire to hit the home run kind of thing. My hunger to get the most out of myself says that I'm not going to get the most out of myself, I'm not going to be of my best utility. The prime directive won't be met if I sit on the couch and fantasize. I can just do that. Fantasize, go to sleep. I could do that. It's quite doable. I can create a fake world, live in it quite comfortably inside my own head. And so, yeah, but you always have to use some mechanism, right? I mean, there's always have to be some sort of, this idea that you could eviscerate all hunger and not be a zombie, I don't think really is possible. So you can play with the hungers you have. You can play with realizations of, perceptions of satisfaction. Daydream yourself into being a millionaire. Daydream yourself into adventures and activities and actions, that you're not really doing, but that you have enough kernels of knowledge that you can build it in your imagination. And yeah, I think that's very doable. But again, it doesn't really have much to do with the world we live in. Because the world we live in, like I said, we do have to do this interaction thing with the real world. And this real world is a sensitive thing in itself. It's not something we just can take from. We can't just take the comforts of life, the necessities of our life. We have to do it in some kind of fair exchange, just logically. That's just one of these prime directive rules. Here's the game. You understand the game. I can't own the slave without theoretically abusing myself. There's no difference with the thing I'm whipping to get my comfort, and so that's not going to work. So obviously in this value exchange, where I'm going to be valuable to the world, I can't extract it in some kind of negative way. I can't leave a deficit unresolved. It has to be a win-win. So that's the catch. That's a limitation. And so that's going to absorb a good deal of your time. It's going to be spent having to deal with this necessity to make a fair value exchange with the world to gain your comfort, your time to sit on the couch and fantasize. Yeah. And so we really can't, and then if we indulge that too, that's that whole addictive syndrome. It's like playing video games or doing something else. We can see how, I was addicted. I don't play them anymore just for that reason, because I know I like it. And I'll do it, and then I know I'm not going to be very productive. So it's not a matter of some kind of guilt driving me. It's just a recognition that this is totally corrosive to your productivity. And we do know that the end result is I have to finance this productivity thing. That's the end goal. And I can compromise here, and I can compromise there, and I can fuck up here, and I can fuck up there. But we know where I have to end up. I have to end up with 500 home runs and a 300 batting average. I can have a bad week, I can have a bad month, I can have a bad year, 2 seasons, but I know where I gotta be in the end. And I know there's going to be work I have to do to get there. And that's not built out of guilt. It's built out of an affirmative, not necessarily positive, but I'm just saying just a realized directive, a realized perception in the mind, a statement in the mind, an understanding is the word I'll use. It's just an understanding that this is the rule. This is how you play this game of soccer. And so you want to play good soccer, you play by good soccer rules. And these are good soccer rules. And that's all you're doing. You're just acquiescing to the environment you exist in. You're saying, I'll play their game. Because it's the only game in town. This is the game. This is the only way you're going to score. Kind of thing. It's the only way you can play is through this mechanism that exists. And so this is, you just understand this is how to play the game. This is how to play the game well. I don't see it any more complicated than that. But yeah, I mean, I agree, it's all a head game. And hunger's the key word. Yeah, hunger's the initiator of all of it. There's no price to pay without you initiating. Hunger starts the engine. You don't burn any gas until you start the engine. Yeah. And that can be supplemented in a lot of ways where you can feed the hunger synthetically and you don't have to turn the key. But then we're back to this argument of, what is the fundamental necessities of life? And yeah, physical health, duh, right there. And then what do you got left after that, right? If you have the rest of it created for you, these maintenance requirements, the rest of it's all just in the head. And we've sort of actually already talked about some of this, but there's often circumstances where you think you want something, and then when you actually have it, you say, shit, that wasn't all I thought it would be. It's like, yeah, gee, the Grand Canyon, I thought it was twice as big. That kind of bullshit happens. Or, well, 5 minutes of that and I'm about done. Yeah, don't need much more than 5 minutes and yeah, I'm done. And you say, well, now what do I do with the other 99 years of my life? So, yeah. But I mean, your obsession with these negative motivators, and but then you're bending it into these, the positive motivators of the hunger, and those are the real negatives, really. Sort of. I mean, they're the bigger negatives, because why need any needs? Why create need at all? Why waste time with it? I mean, it's only a need to need, right? It's like you're addicted to need. Well, that's pretty stupid, right? You can't rationally say it's a good idea to create a need. So, yeah, I mean, you can just start making the game smaller and smaller and smaller as you start whittling around. You start pulling the weeds of the bullshit that you don't need in a brain, and you keep pulling them, you'll find out the whole thing's made out of weeds. There's no flowers inside of us. It's all weeds. It's all bullshit. So, hope that helps. We'll see. But yeah, I guess my point is you can just fake it. You can synthesize the internal game. You can't synthesize your productivity. You have to do that for real. So that's the difference between the two. You can synthesize your actualization, your comfort, in many respects. Comfort in terms of satisfied ambitions. You can convert your ambitions into simple things. But yeah, you can't fake your effect on the world. Your effect on the world is going to be real. And so that sort of has to be taken care of first. That has to be the priority before you go jump into fantasy land. Fantasies are fine for satisfying your needs, but fantasies aren't going to feed the world. They're not going to resolve somebody else's dilemma. or problem. They're not going to fix what's broken. Yeah, that's enough. Alright, anyway. I wrote a whole paragraph here. I don't know what it's, don't know what the fuck it is. But anyway, this external value is the, external value. That's the important one. There's this value game you're playing inside your head, and that one you can cut to the barest minimum. But the external value, no. You can't just head game your way out of that one.